It was the year 1939. The world still remembered the scars of the Great War, and everyone hoped it would never return. But the fire that once burned across Europe was only waiting for air, waiting for one man to breathe life into chaos again. From the heart of Germany, a voice of fury rose. Adolf Hitler. He promised glory. He promised revenge. And millions followed him. Into darkness. Flags filled the skies. Crowds shouted in blind faith. And on the first morning of September 1939, the storm began. German tanks rolled across the fields of Poland. Stuka bombers screamed down from the clouds. Cities were crushed under fire and steel. Children cried. Families fled. And the world watched in silence. In London, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's voice trembled as he spoke. This country is at war with Germany. And with those words, peace died. Once again, the world was at war. But this was not the war of trenches and mud. This was a new kind of war. Faster, colder, and more merciless than ever before. Machines ruled the skies. Tanks and planes turned the earth into smoke and flame. And humanity stepped into a new age of destruction. Across the ocean, America stood apart. They believed the storm would stay far away. But destiny has a way of reaching even those who try to hide. And that call was coming soon. In the ruins of Warsaw, a child clung to his mother's hand. In Berlin, soldiers marched, believing they were invincible. And somewhere in America, a young pilot looked up at the sky, dreaming of flying, unaware that one day, he would fight in the greatest air war the world had ever seen. This is the story of courage and sacrifice, of ordinary men who became heroes, of nations that rose and fell, of a world torn apart, and the hope that refused to die. This is World War II. The world on fire. It was the spring of 1940. The world held its breath as Hitler turned his eyes toward the west. The Blitzkrieg had worked in Poland. Now it was France's turn. A storm of steel, engines, and terror was about to fall upon Europe once again. German tanks roared through the Ardennes forest, a place the Allies thought was impossible to cross. But nothing was impossible for the lightning war. In just days, France's mighty defenses began to crumble. The sky thundered with Luftwaffe bombers, and the roads filled with refugees, families fleeing with whatever they could carry, their faces covered in dust and fear. Paris, the city of light, stood helpless. By June, German troops were marching beneath the Eiffel Tower. The French flag was lowered, and a black shadow fell across Europe. The unthinkable had happened. France had fallen. Across the Channel, Britain stood alone. Winston Churchill had just taken command, and his voice carried across the airwaves. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender. The world listened, and for the first time, hope had a name. It was called courage. But even as Britain prepared for the fight of its life, German bombers filled the skies. Every night, the sirens wailed, and the people of London took shelter underground. Children slept in train stations. Mothers prayed in the dark, and the world wondered, could freedom survive? The answer was written not in words, but in the bravery of those who refused to break. Pilots, mechanics, and ground crews, young men barely 20, rose to defend their island home. The stage was set. The Battle of Britain was about to begin. Summer 1940. The skies above England were about to decide the fate of the free world. Hitler had conquered most of Europe, but one island still stood in his way. Great Britain. Day after day, waves of German bombers crossed the Channel. Their engines roared like thunder. Their shadows darkened the fields below. The Luftwaffe believed victory was certain, that England would fall in weeks. But they had underestimated something. The spirit of those who refused to bow. High above the clouds, young British pilots, the few, as Churchill called them, rose to meet the enemy. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Spitfires and hurricanes danced through the sky, turning the blue heavens into a battlefield of smoke and fire. Every flight was a gamble with death. Every victory was paid in blood. But they fought on, day after day, driven by love of home and the belief that freedom was worth dying for. Below them, the people of Britain endured the Blitz. Night after night, bombs rained down on London. The city burned. Church bells fell silent. And yet, no one surrendered. In the dark of the underground shelters, people whispered prayers, sang songs, and waited for the morning light. When the dawn came, the Union Jack still flew over London. The invasion never came. And Hitler, for the first time, had been stopped. The Battle of Britain was more than a victory. It was a message to the world that courage could stand against tyranny, that freedom could survive the storm. As Churchill said, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.